So I think that Ice Queendom is basically a love letter between Weiss and the PTSD caused by her asshole father. Hey guys, my name is Maria Park and welcome to Approach the Nerd. In this episode, we are reviewing episodes 4 and 5 of RWBY Ice Queendom. I'm really enjoying this anime. I love the Japanese cast. I think they did an amazing job. Actually, I've never seen the volumes with the Japanese cast. I know it was also dubbed by Japanese seiyuu, but the actresses that they are using, especially for our main girls, like Ami Kashimuzu as Yang, perfect. I love Saori Hayami's cute little voice for RWBY. Yoko Ikasa does a great job playing insecure and kind of like noble for Weiss. And of course, Yu Shimamura as Blake has this like really sultry thing going on, and I am here for it. And of course, I love Pira's voice actress, Megumi Toyoguchi. Which I'll talk about more in episode 5 because of events that happened in the latest episode today. But let's jump on episode 4 since I'm behind. If you want to know what's going on with me and the channel, please look at the update video I posted yesterday. That will explain everything about why my reviews have been coming out a little slower. But let's just kind of jump in and talk about some stuff. So for some reason, we didn't get the same treatment that John got when he was attacked by the Nightmare Grimm. He got a whole like kind of exposition where we saw him have like a fever-like thing going on. His team finds him. They have all this like kind of background on what they need to do to save him. Now I know that they were just setting this up because we were going to be saving Weiss, but we just were right in the middle of it when episode 4 started. Like RWBY is just like literally riding on Crimson Rose as a snowboard, basically on her way to try and save Weiss by herself because she was the volunteer. Now it's cool to know that Weiss did not reject her because Xian told Pira or Team Juniper if they tried to go in and John didn't consider them close to him or important to him or friends, that he could reject them and they wouldn't be able to go any further or do anything to save him. Well, obviously, Weiss does actually accept RWBY, even though it seems like she doesn't accept her as leader or she thinks she's childish. She does accept her, or she would have never let her into her dream world. So there's that. But RWBY's first contact is with this like pole that has all of these arrows that are pointing in every direction. It's very hard to understand. And I took that as symbolism that Weiss doesn't know herself what she wants, or, you know, she knows she wants to be needed, wanted, respected as a member of the Snee household, and that her father does not think any of these things. And she knows that she's lonely. She knows that she wants to have notoriety, but she also wants to be loved. And that's the overall thing. And so of course, this map pointing, or this little pole that's basically pointing in all these different directions, are going to be convoluted because Weiss herself has no idea how to get to the destination she wants to get to. So I think that's very cool symbolism, even though it kind of went over RWBY's head a little bit. I love when she runs into the train, the Snee train that's being attacked by the White Fang, because we've known, if you watch the original series and volumes, and of course, even episode, I believe 2 of this series, you know that Weiss talks about how the White Fang attacked the Snee, you know, family business, dust business, you know, and it cost her childhood. Basically, she was around her dad when he was angry about all of these things he could not control because he has to be a controlling a-hole, and it made for a very, as she liked to put in the original volume, difficult childhood. He was abusive. I've never understood if he just hit her all the time. We know that he smacked her in the volumes, but I don't know if it's complete physical, but I definitely know a lot of it was mental and verbal abuse. So with that being said, you know, RWBY is not allowed to interfere because Xian said no. And RWBY's given these coins, and they're kind of like cheat codes you would find in a video game. They get you from point A to point B. They allowed her to communicate with Xian whenever she needs, you know, help or has a question. They also allowed her to create decoys, but she's only given a certain amount while Xian has aura that's, you know, her not depleted basically. And if she runs out of these coins, she's essentially trapped in the dream world. So she can't run out of them. She does make it to the city. We do get to see a few things that kind of give RWBY a red flag that maybe Weiss does not accept her as much as she thought she did. For instance, we see that she's made Klein a grumpy door, which is interesting because I always thought that Klein was like her biggest supporter in this mansion. I mean, you have a father who basically made you go through death trials to get to Beacon. Your mother is a flaming alcoholic. Eventually your sister has already or will run off to Atlas Military, and your brother, who technically is more traumatized than you are, you just don't realize it yet, is kind of right now a mini clone of the dad. So, I mean, Klein was the most supportive person in Weiss's life. And so for her to make him the grumpy door that falls asleep all the time is very interesting to me. I wonder if the only thing I can wrap my mind around with that is maybe she's a little bit resentful deep down that he doesn't do more to help her against her dad. He's just an employee, but maybe she kind of feels like, you could have done this and that. I mean, who knows? But I just think it's interesting that Klein has that role. So, but I also thought it was funny that Klein was holding behind his doors, like John and Ren, everybody she thought were basically inferior or stupid are basically behind, this door, which is interesting. Now, this is where it starts to register with me that we're dealing with traumatized Weiss more than kind of like the nightmare version, which they will later call her negative Weiss, but nightmare world version of Weiss. When she first sees RWBY on the screen, she sighs and she's basically, why are you here? You child, blah, blah, blah. But then she's taunted by, people that in her mind, she's made it like into her family. Like, I'm pretty sure the little sprite person is Whitley. Whitley or her mom, I'm pretty sure it's Whitley. And then you have her dad, who's a statue that's basically his eyes are just looking over everyone, which makes sense because she sees her dad as this like cold, unmoving asshole. So of course he'd be a statue. But yeah, I just think it's interesting that like at first she saw RWBY and she wasn't going to immediately do anything to her. And then she got taunted. And of course, then she started like attacking her. And RWBY, when she starts listening to Weiss and realizing that, hey, maybe you lied about wanting bunk beds when we put our beds together and you said you did, and about me being a leader and you being a great teammate. Oh, maybe you were lying about, Blake and accepting her. She starts getting in her feelings and she's like, she has one tear come out and she's like, you know what? I don't care. I'm just going to snap you out of it. And then I'm never going to speak to you again. And then Weiss, like if you see the look on Weiss's face, she, at first, if you have to catch it, it looks extremely hurt. And then it goes to like this cold shell that she's very good at adapting. And that is the first indicator that Weiss is not doing well. She's struggling. Eventually, I do think that RWBY's going to see how lonely she is, which plays out a little bit more in episode 5. And we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, the entire episode is basically RWBY's introduction into just how, lonely and how much PTSD Weiss actually has. Again, I do love that she's wearing all white and not her traditional like ice blue, even though my favorite color is blue, because it kind of gives that more of that kind of military stoic type, badass leader role in her own mind. And Weiss is in control of her own mind. So like, because she's in control of her mind, and I don't mean that she's in control whereas the nightmare Grimm is not doing things to her. I mean, she's able to use her dream world to her advantage. She is uber powerful. She fights RWBY and she is literally dominating her to the point where she almost kills her. And this is when we roll into episode 5, where she's about to do a strike down, she's about to strike her down, and then Xian grabs her. So Xian's able to wake up the person she sends into the dream world. And then she had to replenish her aura. We got to see Team Juniper come and check on them. And of course, we see John saying, oh, I wish I could be the one that's infected again instead of her and take her place. And you see Pierre looking at her, like looking at John kind of sad about it. So we do still have that little relationship that we know the outcome of that. But it's nice to see that little segue in there a little bit, just so, we see that things are still on track, because this is supposed to take place, I want to say, between the first 2 parts of volume 1, the first 2 episodes, maybe, I don't know, maybe a little bit longer, but definitely not near the end. So definitely a good segue for me to have them in there is kind of cool. And seeing how the 2 teams actually really respect each other. So there's that. Then I love how RWBY's showing her leadership skills again, because she was volunteering to go back in after Xian's power, her aura was replenished, because she didn't want Blake and her sister to see or hear the very bad things that Weiss was saying and showing her. So she was willing to take that hit, even though she's probably the more sensitive out of all three of them. I think Blake caught on to what she was doing. And of course, her and Yang basically said they're going in there. So all three of them go in to the dream world next. Now, in terms of the weapons that Weiss has created, both Blake and Yang's weapons have a complete upgrade. Like, they are uber powerful. RWBY's crescent rose is actually backwards. So the gun is shooting on the wrong end. And so she's like, why would she do that? Like, she was completely offended by this, in a way. She's like, why would she do that? And you guys are going to, so I'm like, why are you guys cool and I'm not? And of course, she's thinking it's because she thinks I'm a child. So, and it's completely backwards. And of course, Yang and Blake and RWBY see, of course, the post again with all the arrows, and they don't get it either. They see the train with the White Fang attacking, and of course, Blake is kind of like, oh, it's the funnest thing, And then they make it into the city, and when they go into the city, it's interesting because we still see grumpy, Klein. But then we also get to see that there's kind of like a fountain area, and like if you walk through it, it's almost like you're going directly into Schnee Manor. But right before we get to that, something really cool happened in episode 5. In the middle of the guys, like all three of them investigating, basically trying to figure out a way to get to Weiss, RWBY actually is talking to Grumpy Klein again, and you start seeing Pyrrha come out with Team Juniper behind her, and she's dressed like Weiss, only all in red, and she starts singing Mirror Mirror. And the Japanese voice actress for her is, I'm assuming it's the Japanese word that Megumi's singing it. It could be somebody else because sometimes they will have a singer sing it, but I think it is the voice actress singing Mirror Mirror, Weiss's Mirror Mirror song. And it's, to me, one of the most beautiful and sad scenes so far we've had, because this is actually Weiss. She's kind of projecting her sorrow, her loneliness, and everything through Pyrrha, because Pyrrha is the person that she idolized the most, the Beacon. And so she's speaking for her sadness. So she's basically a representation of Weiss. And this is a song that Weiss would perform. And I think that whole thing, and RWBY looking at her and waving, that is so sad to me, and it just shows you that Weiss is really, really having issues in her own dream world. But it was a beautiful song, beautiful scene. So I love that. The rest of the episode, basically, we find them trying to find Weiss. So Yang and RWBY surrender. And of course, they're put in a room that's protected, by a very asleep most of the time, Grumpy Klein. And Blake picks the lock without waking him up and gets him out. Because she had made herself a decoy to distract people so that Yang and RWBY could go through the fountain and get to surrender themselves. They all have coins. They have a total of 12 coins, and they've decided to hoard them. So basically, they're going to use one at a time. And so that way, there's no likelihood of them actually being stuck in that world. But they did rock, paper, scissors because they wanted somebody to stay behind to keep tricking Grumpy Klein, the door, that someone was still in the room, because obviously he's not looking. He's like, are you in there? He's not appearing on the other side of the door to see who's in there. He's just asking questions. So RWBY and Yang do rock, paper, scissors. Blake was not in on that, so I guess it was already determined that she was going to go. And of course, RWBY beat Yang, so Yang was the one that had to stay behind for the moment. I love how Blake was not rejected, but she's referred to as the Lady in Black. And she's the only faunus in the entire world. So she represents every faunus, be them good or bad, I guess, in Weiss's mind. Blake is unfortunately the embodiment of all of it. So, and as Blake and RWBY are walking around, Blake thinks she found a way to get to Weiss faster, but they end up running into her. And that's when, pretty much the confrontation's about to begin. And I think what they're doing is really good. Like I said, I love all the symbolism. I love that Pyrrha was the one that Weiss chose to represent her sorrow, her loneliness, her fear. And singing Mirror, Mirror, you cannot get more depressing than that. And I love how RWBY tried to protect the rest of her team, like a good leader, from being hurt by Weiss, even though none of them understand. I don't think they really and truly understand the depths of Weiss's trauma. And that's what I love about this. And I know by the end of this, they're all going to understand it. And I think it's going to probably make Weiss very uncomfortable in the future to know just how open her life is, because it's definitely out of canon, because she had to talk with Yang later on. I believe it was season or volume 5 or 6, spoiler, about what it was like growing up in her house. And, at that point, Yang had no idea. And at this point, there was no way that Yang cannot understand what's happening at this point with Weiss, because she's got a front row seat to her mind and all her memories, basically every representation of Weiss's life is around her, and all of it is traumatizing. And like I said, her family is so dysfunctional. And I love that they're playing this out, because out of all of Team RWBY, Weiss is the one with the most baggage. I mean, you've got, RWBY traumatized over Summer dying, but she still had a loving father. She's always had her sister Yang. Yang's always had her family, even with the whole thing with Raven and our Uncle Crow. Even though Faunus's are being treated like crap, Blake's parents are very loving and supportive. Even though she fell out and joined the White Fang, they still took her back with open arms. It's just Weiss is the one that never really had that support system, even though she had her sister. Her sister essentially did run off to the military and abandon her. She abandons her brother, if you really think about it. It's actually a comment made by her mother later on in volume 8. And her dad is just a piece of crap. So, like I said, as somebody whose father was almost exactly like Jacques, I can tell you firsthand that is a trauma that takes a long time to get past. So that's why I love Weiss. I think I resonate and relate more to her because of, her relationship with her dad. And I'm really happy that this show is kind of showing us the depths to that trauma. Like what happens when you have somebody constantly putting you down in your life, and somebody constantly telling you you're not even, why are you even a member of this family? You're never going to do anything. You're never going to let me control your life for you because you're not capable. That stuff, that right there is what Weiss is actually fighting. So all of her prejudices and biases are all based on the fact that her dad treats her like crap. And I find that very interesting because she's my favorite character. So that is episodes 4 and 5 for me in a nutshell. I really do wish we got a little bit more exposition on them finding Weiss, though. I think that's probably my only gripe in episode 4 is I wish we would have saw them finding her on the street, blacked out, or just their reactions in general. How did RWBY get chosen as the first one to go? Like, more like she volunteered, but I would love to know exactly how that went down. And they just kind of just jumped right into her being in the dream world. So I wish we got more than that. But outside of that, I'm loving what the show is doing and where it's going. And I cannot wait for episode 6. But I would like to know what you think. So please leave me a comment below and let me know. And if you would like to sign up for jury duty, hit the subscribe button. If you'd like to know who's next on the bell, hit the notification bell. Until next time, I can't wait for you to approach the nerd. Bye, guys.
Thank you for watching my video. I really appreciate it. But hey, the party doesn't have to stop now. Click on one of these videos and keep it going.